Okay, example 4 is a little bit more just a basic problem. There's not a fire happening in this problem. It's probably a little less exciting. But anyway, find the measure of the two acute angles in a right triangle with legs measuring 4 feet and 7 feet. So they're telling us about this right triangle. So I'm going to draw a right triangle. The parts of a right triangle are leg, leg, and hypotenuse. And you need to be very careful with what they give you for information. So it says the legs are measuring 4 feet and 7 feet. So that means the two sides making the right angle are 4 feet and 7 feet. I already drew my picture looking like this. It's not drawn to scale necessarily, but this is the shorter side based on my picture, so I'm going to call that side 4 feet. This is the longer side. I'm going to call this one 7 feet. Again, I don't know the hypotenuse, so I made sure that I left the hypotenuse empty there. All right. The task is to find the measure of the two acute angles. All right. In a right triangle, you have a right angle. The other two angles are always acute. Usually, when I name a right triangle, I usually call the acute angles A and B, and then the hypotenuse, or the right angle C. That's what I usually go with. I do like to have letters there, so I have something to refer to when I'm writing stuff out. All right, so going back to this whole idea of what do you know, what do you want to know, right? When you have an angle known and a side known, that's a really helpful thing to do. When you're doing a problem like this where you know two sides, you don't know any angles, what you want to do is say, I want to find this angle. It doesn't matter which one. You can find A first, you can find B first, it doesn't matter to me. Neither one is easier than the other, neither one's harder than the other, they're the same difficulty. So here's how I decide. I say, hey Cody, which one would you try and find, A or B? And you're right. And if I said Delilah, which one do you want to find? You said, don't say the other one. Hey, she's also right. It doesn't matter. Find either one. So Cody said B. We'll go. I asked Cody first. We'll go with Cody. So Cody said he wanted to find B. Pick one you want to find, but then you have to stay with that choice. So if you pick B, we're going to find B. All right. So B is here. Which side's opposite of B? This one here is opposite, right? So if I'm at B, I go across the triangle. The opposite side is 4. Which side in the triangle ABC is the hypotenuse?
AB.
AB is the hypotenuse, right? And then once we know those two, the adjacent must be the other side, right? Just like that, opposite adjacent hypotenuse has been identified. Now, when you deal with a problem where you know two side measures, you are going to pick the trig function that's useful for those two side measures. So again, I'm looking at SOHCAHTOA. All right? SOHCAHTOA. I know the opposite side is 4 feet. I know the adjacent side is 7 feet. So the two sides I know are opposite and adjacent. So opposite and adjacent is tangent. So this has hypotenuse. I don't know anything about the hypotenuse. This has hypotenuse. I don't know anything about the hypotenuse. So only tangent is going to be helpful with what they gave me for information. Okay, with that in mind, if I was to write a trigonometric expression out of this problem, I'm going to write tangent, because we're doing T for TOA, tangent, right? Of the angle we're working with, which Cody said, let's find B, so we're doing tangent of B. Always have trig function of an angle, always. If you know the angle, put the number in. If you don't, put the letter in that represents the angle. So in this case, angle B equals opposite over adjacent, opposite 4 over adjacent 7. All right? So if tangent of B is equal to 4/7, that means that B equals the inverse tangent of 4/7. And that's the button you're looking for on your calculators, the inverse tangent button. Usually, most calculators, you hit second to get to it. So if you see a tangent button, you hit second tan, and then you type in 4/7. My calculator says 29.7449. Seven, 4, 4, 8, 8. So make 8 makes the 8 go up to a 9, right? 29.7449. And again, I simply entered inverse tangent of 4/7. And the button on the calculator, the actual calculator screen displayed tan -1 parentheses. I typed in 4/7 equals. All right. So If I was rounding to 1 decimal place, that's 29.7 degrees is how big B is. How do you think we can find A? 180 minus the two angles we know now, right? Once we know two angles, we can do 180 minus, right? If instead we wanted to use trigonometry again, just because we are in the trigonometry section, if I wanted to find out what A is, which side's now the opposite side? 7 feet is opposite of A, right? Hypotenuse is still the hypotenuse, so that means that 4 feet is the adjacent side to A. And if we're still dealing with the opposite and the adjacent, we're still in tangent, right? So I'd say tangent of A is equal to the opposite 7 over the adjacent 4. Just like we knew tangent equal to 4/7, we did inverse tangent of 4/7 to get B. Now we know tangent of A is equal to 7/4. A equals the inverse tangent of 7/4. Punch that in the calculator. Inverse tangent of 7/4 is 60.2551. If I round that to 1 decimal place, that's 60.3 degrees. Which is equivalent to doing 180 minus these two as well, right? So personally, if this were me, I would probably do the 180 minus the other two once I knew two, right? But again, if you're wanting to practice the trigonometry part of it, you can always practice the trigonometry part of it. So everything is going to be about right triangles. Every picture you see is going to have a right angle in it. Every picture you're going to have to draw is going to have a right angle in it. And then once you get the right angle drawn and draw everything in to your figure, you'll be able to use SOHCAHTOA in some way, shape, or form to find the missing pieces. If you know angle inside, you're going to try and find another side. What do you know? What do you want to know? If you know two sides, the two sides you have will be one of these three scenarios. If I knew these two sides, opposite and hypotenuse, I'm going to use sine. If I know these two sides, adjacent hypotenuse, I'm going to use cosine. So the trig function used is dependent upon which side you're given. So make sure that you identify what they are, so you can use the right trig function. Whichever trig function you have written here, do the inverse of that. So if it said sine A equals, inverse sine would happen. If it said cosine of A equals, inverse cosine equals, right? So that's what would happen there.